What's up, Amazon sellers? Welcome back to the weekly Sunday show where we share some news and answer your guys' questions. I'm Chris Grant, and to my right is my co-host, the stigmatiferous Chris Rasick. Now, for those of you who may be new here, our job is to try to make your life a little bit easier as a seller. Maybe you've got questions about flipping clearance, doing retail arbitrage. Maybe you're concerned about your online arbitrage business. Maybe you want to take wholesale to the next level, or perhaps you've got a question about Keepa that you just cannot figure out. Well, we're here to help you with that. And along the way, we'll share some interesting news and stories. All right, let's dive in. Chris, I don't know if you're an observer, but may the 4th be with you.
And also with you. I don't know what the proper response to that is. It's a mix of Star Wars and my Catholic upbringing, I guess. May the 4th. Yeah, it's such a cool idea. I every year I forget to look up who originated making May the 4th. You know, like who invented Star Wars Day.
Yeah,
actually
I'm guessing, okay. One of the best biographies that I have listened to on the Founders podcast, and David Senra, I know that you're probably tuning in on a Sunday. So, I'd love to have you on the show anytime and talk to you about retail magnets of yore. But I would almost venture a guess that it was the creator of Star Wars himself. Holding on to the rights to make all of the products himself was got to be like the most genius move ever.
Yeah. And actually, depending on what you read, selling it when he did probably saved and amplified the franchise. Because he's, you can argue what his batting average would be with, the ideas beyond the first 6 movies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know. I would have put it on some Star Wars nerd somewhere down the line, that just kind of, because I mean, it's one thing to, have the IP and the toys, build the world and all that. But this is a little bit of wordplay though, so I'm not sure. Feels like it was a group of friends with a shared Star Wars love.
I hope that it was a Star Wars nerd with a lisp, and it was a complete accident.
That would be the ideal. I hope that's it. I hope you're right.
Yeah. So, hey, Rob, Jerry, Kevin, Amazon Thrasher, Kenny, great to see you guys. Joe Mazan, what's going on? And Sneaky, you got a question about Keepa? Drop it in the chat. We're going to get to questions here in just a few minutes. And Jerry, we'll get to yours as well, of course. But before we do all of that, we've got a little bit of an ad spot here. Benjamin Franklin, who is perhaps one of my favorite founders of the United States, he didn't actually become wealthy because of politics. He actually got rich printing newspapers and almanacs. Some great, interesting stories about his pseudonyms and pen names. He's also credited as the inventor of the mastermind, which he actually called a junto. Very, very interesting. Out of the junto or the mastermind actually came lending libraries, which is today's modern library. The fire department also came out of the junto. And many other things from a rubbing and polishing of the minds is what he liked to call it. Franklin also once said that efficiency was more profitable than effort. He obsessively bundled tasks together or habit stacked. He reused materials and he repurposed content to try to stretch every single dollar he could. So if efficiency was good enough for Benjamin Franklin, why are you being inefficient with your dollars as an Amazon seller? You might be paying for 4, 7, or even 10 different tools when you could have a lot of these all under one roof for one price. And that's where Seller 365 comes in. You get tactical arbitrage, inventory lab, smart repricer, feedback whiz, some ASIN tracking tools. It can even get you money back from Amazon and fight those reimbursements that Amazon gave you too little on. And it's all bundled together, and it starts at just $69 a month. Franklin built his fortune on frugality and systems, and you can too. So if you want to get a 14-day free trial to Seller 365, you can head over to getseller365.com. That is getseller365.com. Grab a 14-day trial and get into using it.
It's we've talked about Seller 365 and how great of a deal it truly is, regardless of regardless of anything. It's such a great deal. But you know what? The one thing we don't talk about that this deal is good for is, so you have what you have experience with, whether you were actively subscribed or not. Tactical arbitrage, inventory lab. I use those already. So I instantly save money. But you know what it also does? It kind of, it can delay that when you go searching for the dopamine hit of a new tool. Because I did not explore absolutely everything, right? So there was stuff that I just didn't know about, so like if you ever kind of feel stagnant or something, I don't know how to describe it, but you kind of get itchy for some sort of kickstart to your business or something to get excited about. It's almost like looking, grabbing your phone for a quick dopamine hit. You kind of do that with tools too, so you can actually explore one of the things that you're not familiar with in Seller 365 that you didn't immediately familiarize yourself with. So it kind of keeps the restlessness at bay also.
I like that. So. Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah. All right. We've got a lot of news, and then I'll be honest, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We are going to answer your guys' questions, but a little bit later in the show, something special. I don't know if the right word is special, but something has happened over the last 48 hours, and we're going to spend a little time on it because it's a big moment in history, in my opinion. One that, especially for business nerds. So, but we'll get to that. Chris was on point with the news this week. Much of it we're going to have to get to on Wednesday. I want to start with a little bit of gossip, and I called this piece "Love, Lies, and LinkedIn." But here's a headline that kind of reads straight out of Succession with a retail twist. Kohl's just fired their CEO Ashley Buchanan, I think Thursday, for steering a multi-million-dollar consulting deal to a firm that included his romantic partner. That partner, her name was Chandra Holt. She's a former Walmart executive. She is a now fired BCG consultant, and she is a current collagen coffee entrepreneur, hawking her wares across the internet. This guy, the CEO of Kohl's, was out here dropping 8-figure vendor contracts to someone he's living with in a Dallas golf community. And then to make matters worse, he decided to use his LinkedIn to help her sell her collagen coffee. And I think this is what the folks at Deloitte would call corporate malpractice. So here's what we know. Buchanan failed to disclose this relationship, and it ended up violating Kohl's ethics code. And then he handed this sweetheart deal to the consulting firm that Holt was at. My guess is she probably got a nice bonus from that, and the contract was iffy, to say the best. Holt then got fired from the Boston Consulting Group. This happened the same day this whole story broke. Buchanan, of course, is out, and it seems very likely that Kohl's did it pretty quickly because his bio was up on Kohl's website after the gossip dropped about him getting canned. The board chair of Kohl's is now the interim CEO, and it looks very likely that there are probably going to be some legal proceedings over all of this. There may be some issues with the Sarbanes-Oxley laws that were violated. So it's going to be interesting. Now, as an Amazon seller, you might be thinking, well, that's cool drama, but how does this affect me? Well, it doesn't. But I thought it was fascinating. Um, However, if you want to run this playbook yourself and find yourself a retail executive on Tinder or wherever that can pass you 50% discounts on everything you buy from stores and flip on Amazon, I would imagine that you'd be able to make a pretty penny until they get caught and kicked to the curb. So if you do that, let me know. I'd love to hear it if you give this playbook a try.
I'm curious if what combination of a simple, just a deteriorating sense of discretion versus just how small the internet has made the world,
Oh, yeah.
and whether, are we just not adjusting to, because stuff like this goes on,
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's a, switch context, there's a piece of highway just north of me that has been under construction basically my whole driving life. I'm pretty sure there are road workers who are going to start their career and retire having never finished this section of Route 8, right? And it's just, you hear these stories and, it used to just kind of be hearsay and whatnot, but I don't know. Now you got to be careful what you pin on your LinkedIn profiles. And it's really the connectivity that we have these days. I think maybe older generations are having a bit of trouble adjusting to just how wide the microscope lens is.
I would agree with that. You know that none of the guys in Mad Men were having these kinds of issues, or the people from there was probably all kinds of deals going down that were not so good looking. Next piece of news. Does Jeff Bezos need money for his wedding? Is the question that I came away with. But Jeff, the Beezer is offloading up to 25 million Amazon shares. It's roughly $4.8 billion worth over the next 13 months. This is according to a fresh SEC filing. That is on top of the $13.5 billion he sold last year. Now, Bezos, he's not said why he's selling, but of course, as business writers will do and as yellow journalism will allow, rumors are flying. People are wondering, is this because of the looming tariffs? And he's worried about the stock prices. Is this a desire to diversify? Or maybe just funding this wedding that some people have said is going to cost $1 billion over in Venice, which is also not true, by the way. He's not spending $1 billion on a wedding. However, all of this said, he is still Amazon's largest shareholder, and he's sitting on, I think it was 95 million shares or something like that, or something like that. But he's still got a $212 billion net worth. But of course, some are speculating if this is Jeff showing his paper hands. I don't really think so. I think that's kind of a dumb take. He's still got millions and millions of shares. Wealthy people do this kind of stuff at a regular pace all the time. And if I recall, he actually has the next several years planned out to sell. I think he said something like that once. And he's funding things like Blue Origin. It's very important that we get more pop stars to space. He's investing in EV companies. They just got their Kuiper satellites up to compete with Starlink. He's investing in robotics companies, AI companies, and of course, he's got one hell of a party to throw here pretty soon. And Chris, my question to you is, have you received your wedding invitation yet? And if so, it is a black tie event, right?
I'm expecting it to be. Still waiting on the invitation. What's funny is that we have a hard time grasping what these numbers are. I mean, this works out to, we don't do public math. However, this is a single digit percentage sell-off of the stock that he holds in Amazon.
Yes.
So in the terms of his total net worth, it's a very small drop in a bucket. And I don't know. I would imagine. I would imagine that how does somebody that rich deal with liquidity? It's one thing to have a net worth of $200 billion, which places you right around second place, most richest person in the world. But, liquidity is a whole different issue, So, I mean, this is just kind of, there's not a lot of substance to this in my mind. It's just such a mind-boggling number that it requires some press.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, it's a nothing burger, but oh well. That's what people want to, that's what they want to see. They want to hear, and Charlie, his prenup, I'm sure he paid lawyers handsomely for that. He is not going to make that mistake again. That was the best investment deal the former Mrs. Bezos made in multiple lifetimes. She made a ton of money off of that. All right. So
did a lot of charities.
Well, that's true. There have been a lot of charities that she's been donating to, which I appreciate. There are not a lot of people who are in her position who would do that.
Right.
And so I got to give her a ton of credit there. All right, let's talk about what happened that I think is a big deal. And Jan, I see your question. We'll make sure to get to your guys' questions here very shortly. You guys may know that Chris and I are fans of both Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. I am perhaps a bigger fan of Charlie Munger than Warren Buffett, but they are still both giants, in my opinion. Charlie Munger passed away within the past year, and Warren Buffett, over the weekend, it was the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting out in Omaha. Was the first one without both Charlie and Warren there. And so this was just the Oracle of Omaha himself hosting. But at the end of the weekend, he said he was going to be stepping down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway after 60 years running the joint. Now, I don't know, he never said when he was going to retire, anything like that. He just said when he's ready, he would announce it. So I don't know, did the passing of Charlie Munger, push him into this, or did he just decide it's time to go? But either way, it happened, and it's a huge deal, in my opinion. Like it's the end of an era. It is also the end of the most magnificent streak of investments ever. Everyone says, hey, you want to get rich? You do something long term. You invest in the broad overall market, and then you just wait. And they're not wrong. The stock market from 1964 through 2024 had a 10,000% return. So if you put in $1,000 in 1964 and you just let it sit in an index fund, you would have a 10,000 return on your $1,000. Huge. You'd be rich. However, if you put $1,000 into Berkshire Hathaway back in 1964, you would have had a 500 million percent return on your investment. It would be worth something like $50 million in today's dollars. I mean, it is an order of magnitude better investment than the overall stock market was. And it is just because of the way that Warren and Charlie ran that business. So today we're going to talk about 10 Buffett and Munger ideas that Amazon sellers should tattoo on their brain. And Chris, I was hoping to get your opinion after each one of these. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to run their mental models through an FBA filter. some of their best ones. I pulled up 50 and I tried to pick out the 10 best. So rule number 1, don't lose money. And rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. It's kind of like classic Buffett. And yes, I get it. It is cliche. But it hits different when you're staring at 42 unsellable Nerf guns and $1,200 in storage fees. You should have been in a position not to lose that money. The Amazon seller version of this is that every deal should have some sort of margin of safety. Chris and I talk about this. We'll talk about, hey, here's the asymmetric bet you're going to take. You're hoping that you're going to buy for 10 and sell for 30. But you know what? The worst case scenario over the past year is it sells for 20 and you break even, and that will allow you to play an infinite game. Maybe you're not making $1 million a year or doing $1 million a year in sales. However, if you just don't lose money, you can keep trying forever. And you need to be able to play that infinite game. This rule allows that.
Yeah, and I'd argue against it being cliche because the typical definition of cliche implies that the meaningfulness deteriorates over time, and that's simply not true. So it doesn't fit the cliche, and I do wonder if over 60 years of Buffett saying this, if he's the one behind the fact that it became a cliche. We've said it before that cliches become that way because the sentiment behind the statement is so profound that it gets used over and over again. And the difference with this one is that there's no deterioration in the value of this statement, and if anybody who listened to the Nick Huber interview that we released within the past week, one of his main points, in fact, one of the top 5 that I pulled out, that I'll hopefully get a tweet thread, was the key to being an entrepreneur is to be profitable right away. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you're not profitable right away, you probably need to focus on something else. And that doesn't mean, we simply can't just break even in this business. That you may have a situation where there's no profit left. If you're trying to scale, obviously that goes into increasing the amount of inventory that you purchase. But in some regard, at some point in time in your business operation, there was profit. If you're scaling, there is profit. So yeah, this is, anytime you need to go back to basics, this is a good place to start, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Number 2 is risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Everyone thinks that risk is a price tanking or Amazon coming on the listing, but it's not. Risk is really you not knowing what the hell you're doing, and that does include not knowing how to work your repricer. You need to learn your sourcing strategies, become an expert in those things. You need to understand Keepa. You need to be seeing Keepa charts in your sleep, to be frank. You need to understand the listing, understand, what could be a red flag where there's an issue, or what could be a really green flag. Risk tends to go down when you actually know the game that you're playing and you understand the rules. See, this is something I tell my kids all the time, and they think that I'm dumb when I say this. But my kids talk about, well, that's against the rules, or I can't do this, or I can't do that because of the rules. But here's exactly what I tell them every single time. I'm like, you need to know the rules better than anyone else. I was like, that way, 1, you can follow the rules and not get in trouble, but 2, you can also know which rules can be bent. And with my youngest, with Wyatt, a lot of times he's talking about like things at school. For example, we had a conversation about he wanted to sell Takis, these hot chips at school, and he's like, well, but I'm not allowed. And I was like, well, I said, what you need to do is you need to go and you need to talk to somebody, find out exactly what all the rules are, bring them back to me, let's study them, and then let's figure out how to get around those rules and how to bend them to your will. He's not ready yet to get that, but one of these days.
Yeah, this is a good point. We have a lot of information available to us, and if you're putting off learning Keepa, you're putting off mitigating risk, essentially, because we have historical examples of what worst case scenario looks like. There are a lot of sellers out there, and we'll pose it two different ways. The thing we just talked to Jeff Storch. We had another second interview with him on the podcast. The guy's selling
So
25
good.
million. Yeah, he's selling 25 million, right? Averaging over $2 million a month. You really think that he's not figuring out worst case scenario and maybe holding on to some stuff? Take a lead or an ASIN that you look at where seller count's going up, price is deteriorating, the pinch is in action. What do? Are you going to throw that away and just move on? Or are you going to house that data in a database to be farmed later?
Mhm.
Because the challenge, to get to as big as most of us want to be, volume becomes the volume of inventory that you could purchase becomes a bigger and bigger issue. So the more data, the more risk you understand. It may not be good right now, but check again in 60 days. It may be a great lead after everybody, because we know people just kind of flash in and out, and people aren't monitoring their own databases enough. So if you actually do it, you're actually mitigating risk by simply having a better grasp on the data that you can see, learning Keepa, and then farming your own database efficiently.
Exactly. Number 3, the most important thing to do if you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. Now, imagine this for a second. Would you ever buy a product to have it go sideways and then decide that, you know what I need to do on this is I need to dollar cost average in, and I'll buy that product again at a lower cost? No, I'd be turning one dumb decision into two. You got to stop digging. You've got to know when to cut bait, when to liquidate, how to learn from it, and then move on. I heard a really good saying. You need to be ignorant of the past. It doesn't mean not learning from your past, but being ignorant to what happened in the past does not necessarily mean what's going to happen in the future. You need to be realistic about the present, and you need to be optimistic about the future. So you got to be able to learn from these, and then you got to be able to move past them. Because the seller who can say, "Yep, I messed up," and they put the tourniquet on, they're the ones who are going to win. That's grown man FBA, if you will.
This is such a great quote, and it perfectly encapsulates every time we ask somebody on the podcast about their philosophy on liquidation. It's get what you can as soon as you can. Even if it's at a loss. Because people don't look at the averages. You kind of, when you're sourcing, it's like, ooh, this is 50% ROI. It's a $10 profit. And even if you liquidate, people don't realize that, say it tanks and they tend to get mad, even though they've sold 8 of the 10 that they had in stock pretty close to what they sourced it at. But they're ticked off about those final 2 that are down to single digit percentage ROI. And it's basically break even as far as a profit. Well, that only brings your overall ROI on that purchase to what? 35-40%, which is objectively awesome. That's great. You can thrive as a business owner with 35% ROI. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we tend to kind of focus on that and think about your death pile. Are you going to sell something for $10 and that $10 could be turned over every 60 days at a 20% profit margin? That $10 is $12, and then the $12 turns into 14 whatever. I'm not doing the math, but at 1440, or is it going to sit and be worthless?
Mhm.
Did you put it on credit? Are you paying interest on that? Do you have a zero balance on all all the credit that's available to you? Because you could now be going negative, right? And you're still digging even with inaction, believe it or not. So
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a really good one.
Yeah. Number 4, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the inpatient to the patient. Now, I want you to sub out stock market for a moment for the Amazon buy box. This idea still works. It works in 2 different ways. Okay. You're being patient by going and searching for the deals, whether you're doing retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, even if you're doing wholesale, and then you're selling it to those who are impatient and want overnight delivery. Okay. But you can also be patient with the impatient sellers. There are some sellers who are going to price down immediately to 19.99 because they want that dopamine hit of a sale, or maybe they don't know how to use their reprice or whatever it is. Meanwhile, you're disciplined and icy. You stick to your rules of repricing that you've built based on logic. You're not reacting, you're following a plan. Okay. Sometimes that might mean you need to liquidate, okay, because that is the plan. All right? I was just thinking about this the other day. I had to change some things over from regular repricing rules to the liquidation strategy, and I think a lot of people might kick themselves for having to do that, but it's just following the plan. It got aged out. It has to go, and the easiest way to do that's to lower the price. But there are going to be other times where that $20 seller, their stock runs out because you're following the plan, and now you're sitting there at $32.99 or $40, and you're owning the buy box while everyone else is, wondering why they didn't make any money on that ASIN.
Yeah, we're in a period of hyper turnover. It only takes a few 0% ROI sellers, to really spook a buy box, and cause a lot of bad things to happen. And there is still a point where patience will pay off. We've seen it. A great example is that Neutrogena shampoo that Ollie's carried, the clarifying or whatever in that clear bottle. People are selling it for $100 a bottle now. And where a whole lot of people liquidated as it was pinching at $25. A little bit of patience, a little bit of hold. There's still opportunity there. So,
and not that I would want anyone to have been this patient, because it has been a while, but can you imagine if you had gone out and bought 500 bottles like that, or 1,000 bottles like that, like some people did, and held on until now, and you're selling them at $100 a pop? You're sitting. That's pay off the house kind of money in some cases.
Yeah, and something I was thinking about as I was sourcing this weekend, with everything, with all the gatings that are going on, there's been a whole bunch of weird stuff going on, right? People, I'm starting to get a whole bunch of stuff back, but I know that's not. It seems like a very individual occurrence. Like certain people are getting certain things back, other sellers aren't, and there isn't a lot of rhyme or reason. I haven't been able to pin down any kind of pattern related to it. So you have a situation where I'm kind of taking a fresh look at those ASINs where it, say it's selling for $49.99, and then the seller with very few reviews and running at about a 50% good rating comes in at $40. Just kind of just scalps 25% right off the top as soon as they come in stock. I'm not immediately kicking those out anymore, especially if there isn't a history of a lot of seller traffic to begin with, because I'm not sure those big seller spikes, it feels like there's a less of a possibility of that happening again, so I'm more willing to kind of sit on something and kind of investigate and maybe buy it anyway, even with that price tanker coming in stock. And I think there's opportunity to wait them out while they sell their 5 to 10 units, especially if you don't see the other sellers following them down to 40. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Number 5, we're halfway through, guys. It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. Now, I want you to replace the word company with product. You can buy a fantastic product that has a decent ROI, and you may be able to sleep like a baby, but maybe you chase those garbage items. Maybe because they were cheap, but you know that you're going to drown in returns or maybe customer complaints. Maybe you're hopping on the listings that are kind of iffy. Maybe they've got the wrong brand name on them. Maybe the images are, kind of suck. And maybe the titles are showing the brand name of a seller rather than the actual brand name of the product. Well, you tend to get burned on some of those. Not all of them, but it is better to buy that wonderful product with a fair ROI rather than going for some of these monster hitters where you just got to wonder when's the crap going to start rolling downhill.
Yeah, and spin that towards product mix too. Like which store would you rather have? A store that is 80% Nike with a 50% ROI on average versus a store that has no more than 5% in any one brand running a 30% ROI. Which one's built for the long term?
Exactly. Number 6, you don't have to swing at everything. This one's basically Charlie Munger saying most deals suck. Just wait for the fat pitch. And if you're not sure what is meant by the fat pitch, I wrote a Twitter thread on it. It's one of my favorite Twitter threads, actually, about how to wait for the fat pitch. The Amazon version, don't feel FOMO. Don't have the fear of missing out when your RA buddy posts that he cleared out of Marshalls and made $4,000. Like, you can pass on 100 leads and just hit big on the right 3. You don't have to swing at every single pitch. Sometimes patience is profitable. Sourcing indiscriminately, you tend to make bad decisions. And I've talked about this with a couple of people. They wanted to source. They wanted to source fast. They wanted to source what they thought was profitably. And then, they made the mistake of not going with the fat pitch and using discounts that could be taken away from them. And sure enough, it happened. And then everything is a negative ROI. So these kind of things make expensive decisions.
Yeah, I go back to Nick Huber. Apparently, I'm gonna publicly say my entire Twitter thread on the show today. Go back to Nick Huber. He said, if the internet's excited about something, it's already too late. And that's easily transferred to sourcing habits. You kind of start as a new seller and you get frustrated because you don't realize how many bad products you're gonna have to go through before you find the winners. And you kind of get a little antsy, right? And you decide first thing that you're approved that has a positive number, you start buying it, and it turns out you're so eager for a win that you take a bad swing, just because you're itching to get the bat off your shoulder.
Number 7, the rear view mirror is always clearer than the windshield. In other words, the future's kind of messy. We don't know what the next change from Amazon is going to be coming down the pike. We don't know what black swan event may be in the future. The past is nice and clean. So we should not act like we can predict what, say, a product's going to do next month. However, we can study Keepa, and we can get a damn good idea of how it behaved last quarter, and the quarter before that, and last December. So it is important that we learn from the past because it typically does happen into the future. But we want to have that margin of safety. We don't want to act like we're Nostradamus. We use history to guide our decisions.
And here's the thing. Here's a way to look at this too: is if you're staring in the rear view, you're going to crash, right? Think about where the importance is on what you focus. Like the future is unpredictable, so it's even more important to keep your eyes on the windshield rather than the rear view. And there's a lot of very experienced sellers who cannot get over their lost love of how Amazon used to be, and they're having a lot of trouble adapting to changes. And if you stick too long, if you drive too far, just staring in the rear view, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah. I think one of the most damaging phrases, and this is, I'm not just trying to agree with you, but I think that, back in my day, is really not a good thing to have in your vocabulary that you say very often.
No, no, and even my personal Facebook feed, I bristle at statements like that. Because
Right.
revisionist history is something else. It's powerful.
Yeah. Number 8, know your circle of competence and stay within it. Um, I like this. I don't know that this is like the most killer idea, but it is a good idea to know what you're good at, because it'll also let you know what you're not good at and maybe where you can get some help. Maybe you're a master at sourcing toys. That's great. You can stick with toys, but figure out a way to also be able to either get good at grocery or bring someone on who can help you get good at grocery. Uh, you know, I think that you should, one of the best things you can do is become the best there is at things like Keepa, or a tool like Tactical Arbitrage, or a tool like RevSeller. Like, if you become the best at one of those things, you can go in and just pretty much do anything you want on the platform when it comes to product selling on Amazon. And so I would say that also know your circle of competence, but also choose which circle of competence you actually spend time on building.
And I like this one a little more if you take it from a networking standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you know your circle of people that you trust, that you talk to, that you have open lines of communication with, and you know what they're strong at, versus what you're weak on, and who you can go to for certain questions. This can be very, very useful. As opposed to maybe reaching out to somebody that you don't know, but they've got some idea that becomes a shiny object that you kind of chase down. You're probably better off within the circle of within your network, with
Yes.
around the people that are competent at things that they're competent in.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 9, by far the best investment you can make is in yourself. If you're not putting 5% of your revenue back into learning, what are you doing? And maybe that doesn't need to be 5%, but like courses, coaches, events, I'm totally cool with those. I know that a lot of people like to dump on things. And I know that Miami Seller Conference happened this weekend. I couldn't make it this year, unfortunately. I had to do something else, but I saw people dumping on it. I think that's I think that's a loser mentality. Some people are saying, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't pay for it." Just because one speaker was bad doesn't mean that the other 20 speakers didn't offer something. And what about, who did you miss out on talking to because you weren't belly up to the bar at one of the events there? Just absolute, not a great way to think. Like, I will always pay to go to an event. I will always, want to meet new people. I will pay to have the events in my own home. I will buy courses. I will buy books. I will pay for a coach. It is worth the money almost every time. And here's the thing: you don't necessarily need to be able to apply everything to your life or to your business. I know when I read an entire book, I'm happy to get one or two nuggets that I can maybe change a frame of thinking, or offer a new mental model, or maybe even apply to life or business. And that's worth the I have one book. I have one book that I paid $400 for, which, and a lot, and it took me like 3 months before I told my wife how much it was. But I pulled one thing out of that book, and I guarantee it's made me more money than that book cost me. Um, and that's all you got to do.
Yeah, it's about flexibility. I'm lucky that I'm just kind of wired to constantly be on the search for new ideas, or reinforce ideas that maybe I think I'm slipping a little bit. And I'm just naturally curious. I
Hmm.
want to be as smart as I can, and I want to consume as much knowledge as possible. And I know everybody's not like that, but it certainly helps if you can kind of take that frame of mind. And we throw it back to the old sellers. Like if things change, are you willing to learn something new? How many people out there I wrote an email a couple days ago, and I kind of predicted what's going to happen to a lot of people with the Walmart challenge. It's the OA challenge pedigree, which is a trusted format, educational format. And there are going to be a lot of people that pass on it, like, oh, I'll think about it or whatever. And then before you know it, it's going to be too late. It'll be sold out, or registration will be closed, or whatever the reason, because you didn't take action, and people don't realize, it's still a decision. If you don't do anything about it, you decided to not do anything about it. Are you willing to learn this other marketplace, or are you buying your own BS? Like, well, I don't really have the bandwidth for a whole new marketplace right now.
Mm-hmm.
You may find that it comes in handy down the line. Even if you don't enact what they're going to be taught over the Walmart challenge, you have it available to you when you need it, and you'll have a base of familiarity with the curriculum. So
Exactly. The last one, time is your friend, time is the friend of the wonderful business, the enemy of the mediocre. If your products are good, if your systems are tight, if your account is clean, time will probably make you a pretty good size seller on Amazon. But if you're constantly buying bad products, you're ignoring your account health, like, same thing's going to happen. Time is going to catch up to you. It's important to like build something that compounds, a system, your own reputation, not just in the like seller community, but with Amazon. I think people sometimes forget that you do have a seller reputation with Amazon. How quickly are you taking care of account health issues? Are you really trying to show Amazon that, I'm buying from the right places? Like, those things are important. But once you've got everything in place, like, get out of the way and let time do its thing. It's okay to not have a $10 million business in the first 5 years. Like, it's okay for that to take 10 or 15 years. I'll be honest with you, even $1 million business, your business is bigger than like 97% of the other businesses out there. And that's not just the Amazon space. That's across the entire small business community, like everywhere in the country. So stop chasing Lambos and just allow time to do its thing.
Yeah, and this basically boils down to being a good business person. It's all the the context when we talk about looking at this as a hobby, a side hustle, versus the fact that you're a CEO of a business, and you really should treat it that way and act accordingly. That's an important shift in mindset that can help a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Now, I know that I hope you guys like that, but before we get to anything else, Chris has the law this week, and I wanted to let him dive into that.
Yeah, we it seems it was one of the early ones. See, I feel like a lot of people know it, but I still believe it's worth refreshing. So Sunday shows, we always try to give you some sort of law or principle for your business, like a mindset kind of thing. And I wanted to go back to Parkinson's Law because honestly, it's one of my favorites. It's one of the ones that was one of the biggest aha moments when I read about it. And I love the fact that it's both a positive and a negative, depending on how you treat it. So here's how it goes. And I want you to picture this, right? You block off an entire day to do a shipment reconciliation and repricing, right? It's an admin day. And by the end of that day, you've reorganized your entire desk. You got in an argument on Facebook for 2 hours, and you went down a rabbit hole of a tempting sale that you saw in one of your emails just because you had the time, right? So Parkinson's Law is the productivity hack that you didn't know was sabotaging your hustle. It's the idea that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Give yourself a week, and the task will magically take a week to complete. Give yourself a day, and surprise, you'll get it done in a day. And you can kind of see how powerful that can be with those two examples. Cyril Northcote Parkinson, the OG of time management, spotted this back in 1955. He joked that even writing a postcard could balloon into an all-day affair if you let it, right? You can search for the perfect card, got to find the address, where do my glasses go? Maybe you're even pondering the weather. Maybe it might rain before you walk to the mailbox, right? And all these things stretch a simple postcard into an entire day. And I know that sounds familiar to more people than probably want to admit. But here's the kicker for entrepreneurs and Amazon sellers. More time doesn't mean better work. It usually means more procrastination, if we're being honest, more research, more busy work that feels productive, but actually isn't. The real flex is setting tighter deadlines. That's how you make this into a positive. You sprint through whatever you're working on in 2 hours instead of 2 days, and you'll be shocked at how much sharper your focus is when the clock's ticking. So next time you catch yourself stretching a task to fill your calendar, remember that constraint is the unlock to Parkinson's Law. Give yourself less time, set a tighter deadline, and your productivity will skyrocket. Parkinson's Law, it's not just a theory. It's your secret weapon if you let it. Use it, and you'll find yourself more productive than ever. I love Parkinson's Law, Chris.
I do too. I also, every time like we talk about it, or you talk about it more, I know this is one of your favorites. I also kick myself because I know it. Like it is ingrained into my brain, but I don't want to call myself a victim, but I allow myself to fall into this trap, and I catch myself doing it all the time. I'm like, hey, I know that I'm going to spend X number of hours on this, and then all of a sudden, because I'm not super tight on that deadline, I will find myself over on Twitter or making a comment on Facebook, and it's. Thank you for bringing this up because I needed a reminder.
Yeah, I find myself feeling better every time I look into it, even if I intended to or not. It's like, yeah, it just explains so much,
Yeah. All right, let's answer some of your guys' questions. Thanks for hanging with us on those. I know we went a little long today, but it's our show, so we can do what we want. But hopefully you got some use out of those things too. Like we do this not just to blather on, but we do this because we're interested in it, and teaching this stuff also helps us learn and hopefully helps you right along the way. But let's answer your guys' questions, help you guys any way we can. The first one we've got here, Jerry, here we go. Have you ever been successful having Amazon re-stickering an item to a different FN SKU? I have 2 listings in FBA for the same item in different categories, hoping not to have one sent back. I have heard mythical stories over an Amazon campfire of the people who have said they've been able to do this, or have said that they have a friend that has been able to do this. I've never met the person who actually did it. So I fear that it's one of those cases where you're very likely going to have it sent back. Now, could you open a case and try to get it done? Yes. And you might want to try, and hopefully you're that mythical figure. But I wouldn't count on it. All right. Sneaky verse. My question is, what filters do you guys hone in on more strictly to find decent items? Specifically talking within Keepa, probably talking within Keepa Product Finder. Let me do this. I don't necessarily want to give you a set of filters that you could go out and use today. Okay. I could give you a fish and feed you for a day, but maybe we teach you to fish and feed you for a little bit longer. So let me give you this framework instead. look in your business, and it's very likely you're going to see that 80% of the profits are coming from 20% of the products in your business. I know some people will be like, that doesn't make any sense, but it's true. The Pareto principle is everywhere if you look close enough, and it is definitely in your Amazon business. So go into Inventory Lab, go into Seller Board, whatever you're using, go in there, find out what ASINs are pushing the most profit for you. And then go and look at those ASINs and see what do they look like? Are they items that are ranked under 10,000? Are they all ranked between 50 and 100,000? What is their average prices? What do the average prices look like over the past 30, 90, 180 days? What's their average sales rank over the same time period? How many average number of sellers are there on those listings? Go write all that down, and then go put those numbers into Keepa Product Finder and find more products that look similar to what is already profitable for you, and then go source those. Okay. You know how to do that part. Like, you just have to find them cheaper than you can sell them for, but go find the ones that already look like the ones you're selling that are doing well, and then do everything you know how to do to get the cost lowered. Use your discount coupon codes, use your discount gift cards, use sales cycles, whatever it is. And I think that's probably one of the best things you can do.
And I'll add on to that, not only if you're looking at your own inventory, your own sales data, you can also use that to figure out what you want to do more of. I often find that I'll take a look at what I have, and at various times I've had desires to sell more in certain categories. I will repeatedly fall in love with the pet category for some reason, just
That
because I know
hurts me.
how that hurts you.
That category always hurts me. I come back to it, like a long lost love, and it always hurts me.
Well, I love how much people are willing to spend on their pets. I mean, it's just it's like organic in the grocery category. It's like these people, they just have a built-in multiplier to what they're willing to spend. But you can do it with certain categories. And not just pets. I've for some reason I have an affinity for health and household. That one's probably not quite as justified though. But you can isolate categories. If you're selling too much, maybe you're getting your fear and IP complaints, or maybe you're focused on your account health. You can filter the number of sellers. You can put a search and Keepa Product Finder to have a minimum of 3 sellers or more. And then you can pull data from there. Maybe you want your average selling price to be higher. Like, I'm sick of selling these $19 items. I feel like I'm getting nowhere. I want to increase my average purchase price. That's a corridor that you can set up in Keepa. You can search, you can put directly, like, I want to find products that sell between $60 and $65. And you can set that and a couple other filters, and you can have Keepa Product Finder take it from there for you. So it's really, we don't know your skill level, Sneaky. This may be preaching to the choir. Maybe you were looking for something more advanced, but it depends on your level. And if you have follow-up question, maybe there's something more specific, and you can look at, you can program for dropping seller counts. If you want to if you love the idea of cashing in on something that tanked, and the fallout after everybody's gone, and you want to swoop in and make some profit that way, you can set that and Keepa Product Finder. It's amazing what Keepa can do, which also makes it, that's kind of what makes it difficult to give you a more specific answer as well. That's why the broader response is more useful, because it does so much.
Yeah. And Chris, you said something there I thought was interesting. Maybe this person, and we're assuming here, maybe you're looking for something that's a little bit more tactical at the moment. But I would actually argue, and I'm arguing before you even make the argument here, is that too many times we forget the blocking and tackling, and we're looking for, you know, jumping over the defender, doing a backflip when really we just need to just work on what works, the fundamentals every single day.
Yep.
Jan, FBA. I've been selling OA for over a year now, but I want to get into wholesale. How do I get into wholesale? Well, I want to make it super, super simple for you. Go and pull a list of all the products that you've sold on Amazon over the last year. Okay. And if you've got a death pile in your house, go and pull those products from your death pile. And I want you to, this one is not a good example, but I'm going to go ahead and look at this right here. Okay. I just want you to, I'm drinking a 0 sugar Minute Maid lemonade. All right. So you can look on the back of this and you can see who is actually selling it. Okay. Now this is a Coke product, but this was actually canned by someone in Florida. Okay. And I can see who canned this item. I could reach out to them and want to sell their product. Well, if you look on the back of just about any other product that you've got, that you've sold, that's in your pantry or anything like that, it's probably going to give you an 800 number. It's probably going to give you a website. Call the 800 number. Say, hey, I would like a referral to a distributor in my area. Hey, do you have a distributor in the Southeast that I could speak with? Oh, yeah. What do you do? I'm a retailer and I'm interested in carrying some of those products. That's it. And then shut up. Wait for them to give you the information. Reach out to the distributor, reach out to the supplier. Do that 100 times. And you'll be well on your way into wholesale. And that's it. Like I think people want like this, what's the complicated fancy path? Nope, you don't need that. Just do the easiest thing because other people aren't doing it.
Yeah, I love. I used to love Corey's tweets, Corey Ganem, when he would just post pictures on Twitter of trucks that he saw just as he drove around in his hometown, and you'd see the name. It would be a distributor. It would have an 800 number most of the time. I mean, it literally opportunities were passing you by as you're just going about your day. So
Yeah.
I am curious. I'm always curious on these kinds of questions. Jan, tell me why, if you're only doing OA for a year, tell me why you want to get into wholesale. Is it OA frustration, or are you so proficient at OA you're now ready to expand? Because we're no stranger to the show running 90 minutes, so you have up to a half hour to put a follow-up if you want to chop it up on that topic.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I only ask because I'm afraid that it's frustration on OA. So maybe there's something more constructive that we can talk about. That's the only reason I bring it
up. Jerry, pod with Jeff Storch was amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. The first podcast we did a year ago with Jeff, fantastic. I actually think this one might be even better. It's good. And Jerry, thank you. Jerry enrolled in the Walmart Challenge. It is going to be excellent. Sarah is going to absolutely crush, and we're going to turn it into the premier place to learn about how to start selling on Walmart. It's going to be really, really good.
And if you're on the fence, the FOMO will be real.
That's right. I believe you pronounce this Manuel. If I'm wrong, let me know. But Manuel, what's your opinion on why Amazon now is asking for 100 units for Nike? I've got a lot of ideas as to why they are starting to go this route and asking for more and more units. And at first I was like, well, maybe it's because Amazon wants to make the gate a little bit higher to try to keep out the people who are doing counterfeit and selling stolen products and things like that. But if you're selling counterfeit and stolen products, wouldn't it just make sense to go out and get that bigger invoice? Or if you're selling counterfeits and stolen products, wouldn't you just fake the invoice to try to get ungated? And so maybe it's not that necessarily. Maybe it is though that they want to um maybe they want fewer number of people trying to sell particular brands. And so they've made the gate a little bit higher for some people. And the people who are going to be it's going to be worth taking the time to do that are the people they want, because they know that maybe they're going to carry a larger assortment. Maybe they're going to go a bit deeper and that kind of thing. But then the other thing I think that Amazon's pendulum tends to swing too far in one direction or the other. And we've got to remember that the folks who work at Amazon and make these decisions, they don't necessarily have an understanding of what's going on the seller side. For example, there are some people at Amazon who make rules and they actually don't know what retail arbitrage is. Not that retail arbitrage is illegal or against Amazon terms of service or anything like that, but they're sort of in this walled garden and they don't know, so they're coming up with these ideas of how to make the platform better, not realizing the second order effects of people who do retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, etc. But we know that Amazon's pendulum swung way too far, and pictures of your dog or Barack Obama were getting you ungated. Okay. Thanks, Obama. And now the pendulum is seemingly swung too far in the other direction. And Amazon's making it incredibly hard. Not only are the unit requirements higher, but Amazon's also turning more of them away, even when you are following all the rules. And with Nike, for example, you've got to just get that 100 units in there. You've got to show them the invoices, show them the packing slip, the shipping confirmation, etc. And then you've got to call and get someone to actually look at it. So,
yeah, you know what? You want to oversimplify it? Amazon just essentially verified the supply chains of nearly their entire third-party seller network. And I think it's a safe bet that they uncovered multiple questionable supply chains. And if you want to be blunt, they probably found a bunch of counterfeit items, because I mean, Chris is a little better versed at the criminal mind problem solving skills than I am. He just thinks they'll fake an invoice. I would wonder if they have 100 burner accounts, are they that detail oriented? They may let something slip or may not care, and they'll just kill that store off and move on to their next burner one. I don't know. It's foolish exercise to speculate on how the bad sellers would go about business. But I think they uncovered a lot of stuff they didn't like, and they are trying. And it's very, very difficult. You're basically trying to sew with work gloves on, thinking about Amazon's size and how many third-party sellers there are, So, and it's well known that there are factories on the other side of the hemisphere that create counterfeit goods, specifically built and operate to produce counterfeit goods. And Amazon's trying to limit that. So it makes sense that they would put a gate like that. Collateral damage would be the small sellers that dink and dunk 5 and 10 units. Smaller sellers may have a little bit of pain as Amazon tries to take care of something like this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jerry, without spending a lot of time, could each of you reshare your strategy for avoiding long-term storage in FBA? Do you do it manually or use software? I have my repricers tell me how old my inventory is. So I just go in there and I have rules set up. Like when it gets to this age, we start liquidating. And that's, for me, it's 90 days. Once it's 90 days old, it gets liquidated. If for some reason it gets over like 120 days old, like I will super liquidate, and that's it.
Yeah. Mine's just a simple matter of sorting by age in Seller Central. You can isolate the categories that they offer you. Nothing ever gets to 180 days. I forget I haven't looked at it in a while. I forget what the categories are that they offer you as far as sorting goes. But essentially it's just 90 days, we're moving to 0% ROI and getting rid of it.
Yep.
So
Amazon Thresher, keep us down again. Oh man. Oh, and then it just loaded again. Amazon Thresher, what Midwest state are you from? I'm curious. Yeah.
Is it the OPE?
It's the OPE. Yeah, that's the giveaway. Dead ringer. Wondering if you're from Minnesota. There. All right, DJ Crazy Jimmy. Yeah, bought all my Nike legally. Yeah, it's been rough. I get it. It has been rough. And Jerry, I too find it fascinating. A lot of people have made a lot of money with it, and it's sometimes uncomfortable to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna move on to something else. I can kind of understand both sides. I never sold a lot of Nike, got regated in it, not even really worrying about it.
Yeah, it's I think that's probably indicative of the types of stuff and the types of strategy and that we talk about. But I mean, there must be a whole lot of people out there just building entire guru courses about Nike, right?
Mm-hmm.
That must be the fascination, So maybe it's worth inch deep, mile wide as far as the inputs, as far as your own education is worthwhile as well.
Yeah. All right, Ace, we got a long one here. Have a bizarre issue where my Amazon account and seller account is locked. Can't log in due to a billing verification where a hacker logged in and tried to order laptops. I've got 2 cases open. So are there any phone numbers to be able to reach billing or fraud department to clear this issue up, as level 1 support is clueless? I would probably start by reaching out to the @AMZN Seller Help Twitter handle and see what they can do to help you. I know that there have been other people who have had this kind of issue happen, and this tends to be one of those longer issues to get fixed. Like it can take a week, 2 weeks sometimes, but I would start with the Amazon Seller Help and work your way up from there.
And maybe
I knew it. Nebraska. I knew it. I was a short, very short term Nebraska resident myself. So spent a little time in Lincoln, Nebraska. And of course, even in my early 20s, I took the trek to Omaha just to drive by the Oracle of Omaha's business. Yeah, DJ Crazy Jimmy, need to have 1% deep in any given brand going forward. I think that might be a little too conservative. I think 5% is a pretty good number, and that's not just me. And that's something, Chris and I have said this for a very long time. 5%, maybe it gets to 10% on a fluke. But that's being backed up by people like Eli Glukowski, like Jeff Storch. So we're seem to be on the money there. But yeah, 5% is probably a good place to be. Oh, nice. Yeah, Lincoln's your hometown. That's great. I I made the mistake of going to college, and within the first 2 weeks, I was like, "Yeah, this isn't for me," and so I stayed there until that semester or quarter, whatever it was up, and then I got out of there.
I do, man. If I had had the chance to plan my college applications all over again, I certainly would have. It would have been very, very different.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why I didn't seek out some warmer weather.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jerry, any thoughts on these generic listings? I see lots that have been up for at least 5 years that are listed generic but have brand names in the title. Great selling ASINs on Keepa but can't list. I have a thought. I don't know if it's the right one, but my thought is that I would imagine when Amazon came out with the whole you can't sell generic on generic listings anymore, that they're like, you know what, this is probably a good idea. However, we don't want to nuke our catalog overnight. And so I know that some of them have gone away probably when they went out of stock completely. So I would imagine that if there are certain people who are able to get on the listing, or they can restock on that listing, that they're keeping them up until people just can't get on the listing anymore. And their way of kind of having it die off is just to not let new sellers on it, is what I'm thinking, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of faith in Amazon's ability to prune their own catalog.
Yes.
Seems like they never seem to do it very quickly, no matter what what they say they're trying to do, right?
Yeah. Clarence, anything to help get approved to seek hazmat? Aggressive patience, my friend. That's about all you can have. Go ahead and get request approval for hazmat. Don't not sell hazmat. My English teacher would be very upset with that sentence. But go ahead and sell hazmat, merch and fulfill it. I'm not going to say that that's going to get you approved any faster, but what can it hurt if you merch and fulfill some hazmat? And then eventually you will get the invitation. I think that it probably happens when there's like more space available, because they do limit the amount of space for hazmat, because they have had some places burned down due to them. So Charlie is asking the hard-hitting questions. I appreciate this. So what is it with these people from Ann Arbor? So it's not Ant Arbor, it's Ann, A-N-N Arbor. Not that it matters. They couldn't spell it anyway. But what it is I am a native of Columbus, Ohio, where the Ohio State University is, and our rivalry, our rival college is in Ann Arbor, that state up north. And so it is with great pleasure that I poke fun at folks from Ann Arbor as my way of being true to my Buckeye roots, and giving them the business whenever I can.
Yes. And Charlie, that is the question. What is it with people from Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So most of these listings I'm talking about only have one seller, FBM, and never go out of stock. That, to be honest, that lays a little more credence to what my thought is that they've just keep people from getting on the listing, but the person who's on it just doesn't run out of stock so that they can continue to replenish on that listing. Is there a way to get my account get up and running? I was late in verifying the address. I think it was January. Now it's become impossible to reach out to them to fix. Longtime seller, any help? So I don't think I have enough specifics here. But again, I might suggest that you reach out to the @AMZN Seller Help Twitter handle and see where they might be able to point you in the right direction. If it was just a postcard verification, like that should be something that is overcomable. If it was a supply chain verification, like a Section 3, at this point, perhaps you need some professional help with a company like Seller Basics. So I'm not 100% sure there. How about jumping ship from RA and in-house prep and try 98% prep center OA going forward? I'm not anti-RA. RA has big benefits. I would not want to take you away from something that is working and say you should absolutely go to another model instead. Yeah, that one's going to take a little more thinking there, Jimmy.
Yeah, you like the big sweeping percentages, Jimmy. That's for sure. I look, from my experience, and I don't know how technical this is, but I really liked the combination of somewhere between 60 to 80% OA, and then the remaining 20 to 40% RA. Especially I mean, if you're running primarily RA with in-house prep, you know how to do it. So, and it's not like you don't necessarily have to start doing OA and take up all of your time. You know, you could still kind of do a little bit of RA. And what I liked about it was that I had the bulk of my inventory sent to a prep center. It was hands off. As soon as I purchased it, they would package it up, they would send it in for me. But then I also had units coming out of the house separately. And I like the idea of boxes of my inventory all over the UPS infrastructure, you know, at different times. You know, stuff got checked in. You know, you wouldn't really notice if something wasn't getting checked in very quickly, you know, because you've got boxes coming in all the time. And you get to straddle the benefits of both models, OA and RA, by keeping staying active in both. So,
Yep. Hassan, I am glad you brought this up. The fact that Ohio did so well against them in the last couple of years, and I know there's a little sticking it to it. You're absolutely right. It has been a rough run of it. We can thank Mr. Stallions for that, and we'll see how the NCAA punishes the school for its blatant cheating. Horrible cheating. Matter of fact, every time I go and look it up, a little more information comes out how bad it was and what they were doing, sign stealing and all that stuff. Which, I mean, I expect nothing less.
Chris, what did Hassan say? I couldn't hear him over our championship trophy.
That's true. Yeah, I could not hear it over the vice president dropping it in front of a national audience. Supremo, what are your thoughts about listing some ASINs for Lego in Walmart for merchant fulfilled? So I will be honest, I don't sell much on Walmart. I have sold some things. I will sell more there. I'm bullish on Amazon. Okay, so that's where most of the stuff is going to go because I think that's where the opportunity is. But I am agnostic when it comes to where your inventory should be sold. I think your inventory should be sold where it is best to be sold. So if that is Walmart, that's where it should go. If the better channel is Amazon, that's where it should go. And there are some things that are better for eBay, and those things should go there. So yes, like if you could ask me, should I sell this on Amazon, Walmart, Etsy, eBay, whatnot? My answer is yes. You know, it just depends which one is going to get you the desired results.
Yeah. And by offering that stuff, especially if you're going to ship it yourself, the best kind of data is the data that you come by personally. You know, you'll actually know for a fact that, you know, if you're listing this stuff, you know, so, and you can adjust accordingly to whatever's best for your business.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, any destination or warehouse location that I shouldn't consider when doing my shipments in Inventory Lab? So far, I choose the best price. I mean, there are a couple. Like, I don't particularly care for PBI 3, which is out of Jacksonville, Florida. They tend to just be slow. Some people like to call them a black hole. I don't think that's the case. They're just slow. I can't really think of a place that's like the worst. There are some where they tend to lose some more inventory than others. I don't really keep a track of it that much. I personally would just go with where is the cheapest, and send it there.
Yeah, I don't find that a constructive exercise. I don't want to sit there and gnash my teeth over, a box going somewhere. I kind of take the attitude that I should just concentrate on shipping out the next box sooner, instead of trying to cherry pick, because it changes. I mean, they're you hear different things. There's the one in Charlotte was bad for a while, and I don't think the returns on your attention are worth it for the most part.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One, your returns on attention, but two, it does seem to move around. Yeah, like,
and it's not like there's anything you can predict about it either. Who knows? Maybe they had 10 employees walk out somewhere, and it's just it's going to be rough for a few weeks until they get people up to speed. It could just be a blip that ends up wasting your time if you focus on it too much.
Yeah. Petrus, what is that Twitter handle? It was not clear. I dropped it in the comments. It's at AMZN Seller Help over on Twitter. Could they be getting around by stating in the title fits the brand name? Here's an example. So Jerry, I'll look at that example. It's possible, but when they use the term fits, that is, you're allowed to do that in very specific instances. Now, someone could be using it to try to sidestep a rule. I won't, and that's why so many Amazon loopholes get shut, is because people end up abusing those loopholes. But I'll take a look at that, Asen, once we're off air. Some, if not all, Lego is gated on Walmart, FYI. Yes, that is true. You do need to get ungated to sell Lego on Walmart. You can get ungated. It can take you up to a month. And you do need to know, if you are going to sell on Walmart, that very likely coming up is going to be CPC issues with Walmart. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers the CPC issues with Amazon. It was a long and protracted period of frustration. And we're very likely going to see the exact same thing on Walmart. But we shouldn't be surprised at all. Like, these are what growing pains are. So all right. I did not have time to put together a dad joke for today. So I'm all out of ammo this week.
Wow. That is that's shocking. That's the biggest breaking news that this show has had in quite some time.
Yeah, I apologize. I've got some stuff that just make you roll your eyes, but I don't feel good about it. So I'm not going to do it.
Man, I'm trying to think if my kids had any good ones. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, we'll get it back on Wednesday. Franklin, are you noticing an increase in sales on Amazon FBM, or is it just? I don't know. I try not to do merchant fulfilled. I try to do as little as possible. All right, guys. We'll wrap it up there. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. We'll be back here on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. to do this all over again, answer your questions, help any way we can, and bring you guys some good news. There's some good stuff on the docket for later this week. Until then, everybody, have a great one, and good selling.